This is the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors meeting.
I will call this Waupaca County Board of Supervisors meeting to order, and it's Tuesday, December 17th. It is a little after 9 a.m., and press your roll calls buttons, please.
Roll call shows 26 members present, 1 vacant.
Clerk Lodewagen, has the open meeting statement been legally fulfilled?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Before we stand for silent meditation and a pledge, just remember today that we had one of our own, Bob Fleece's brother, Claire Fleece, pass away recently. Please remember Bob and his family and Claire's family in their thoughts and prayers, along with the terrible devastation of those deadly tornadoes last night in Louisiana. Just horrible. So please stand in silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, next we have to approve the agenda. Mr. Fedowitz.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to amend the agenda to move everything that you see under point 9 resolutions above point 8. Thank you.
Okay, we need a second, do we? Mr. Maroc?
I would second that motion.
Second by Mr. Maroc. Any questions? Please vote. Now we have to vote on the amendment.
Doesn't like me tonight. Sorry. Because Dawn is here showing how the system works, we're going to make sure that we give her every scenario. There you go. Is it up? No?
There we go.
That's showing the tally, which it shouldn't be showing. It's still not showing? Okay, well, I guess today we're going to be doing roll call vote, and Jill will be, could you call the motion, and if you're not in favor, raise your hand of the amendment of to approve the amended, or I'm sorry, I'm going to go back, and to approve the, approve amending the agenda to move all of items 9 before items 8.
So are you calling roll?
If you would like to just do a voice call. Oh, there it came on. I had to threaten it.
26 to nothing before. Yeah. Why do we need to roll call?
Everything was up there.
It was all up.
It didn't show any voting on mine. I didn't tally.
It was up there. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back and see if we can get it to show if it did that.
It's a lot worse than this.
Okay. Let's just vote by voice on that one, and then we'll go to the to approve the amended agenda. So we had the motion by Supervisor Fedowicz, a second by Supervisor Morak to amend the agenda to remove resolutions before ordinances. Do you want to call the question?
All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? That motion is carried.
Thank you. We'll figure out what happened there. Now we'll go to approve the amended agenda.
We have to approve the, as amended. Is there a motion? Mr. Quistman?
I'll make that motion.
The motion by Mr. Quistman. Supervisor Lair?
Second.
And a second by Supervisor Lair. Any questions? Please vote.
It isn't coming up here. It says change, but it's not coming there. At your vote.
Okay, it looks like everyone's voted. So Jan, are you feeling comfortable that you voted, or?
I don't know what's going on here.
It says you voted aye.
Oh, okay.
Okay, last chance to vote. There, let's hope from this point on we're good.
Got the easy stuff over now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the minutes.
Okay, well, it looks like we are now going to approve the minutes, maybe. Supervisor Lair?
Vote, yeah. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Lair to approve the minutes. Mr. Nygaard.
I'll second that motion.
And a second by Mr. Nygaard. Any questions? Please vote.
I'm not showing it. It's not coming up as symbol. We're getting that hesitation again, so I'm not going to click because did you all vote? Because I'm not seeing it. It's popping. It's not showing on my normal screen. So I apologize. I'm just going to ask you that each time. So last chance to vote. And the minutes carry 26-0.
Thank you. Okay.
Ratification of law enforcement.
Number 7, ratification Law Enforcement Association Collective Bargaining Agreement 2020-22002. 21, I'm sorry.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mandy.
It's probably been quite some time since we've come before you with a contract to be ratified. The contract prior to this went to arbitration for the 2017 to 2019 agreement. So then in that case, it doesn't come before you to be ratified. So probably it was, I didn't look at the exact date, but in 2016 at some point, we would have had a contract for you in that time frame. So what we have before you today is the tentative agreement between the Waupaca County Law Enforcement Association and the county. And this is for a 2-year agreement through 2020 to 2021. And all the tentative agreements were in your packet for you to take a look at. One of the substantive changes that you'll see as far as a lot of language is that this year the association went to WPPA, the Wisconsin Professional Police Association. Previously, they were represented by AFSCME, AFL-CIO. So they made that change this past summer. So a lot of the cleanup language in that agreement was to change that representation language and some of the things they set up as far as fair share, union dues deduction, and processing, those type of things. So that, if you see a lot of language changes there, that's primarily because of that. Do you want me to go through it piece by piece or open it up to questions? Definitely.
We can open up to questions. We have questions? No questions. Supervisor Jonley?
I move to approve
There's a motion by Supervisor Jonah to approve. Supervisor Vasquez,
I second that motion.
and a second by Supervisor Vasquez. Questions or discussion? Let's vote.
Supervisor Lear, can you press yours again, please? There you go, thank you. Last chance to vote. That passes 26-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Okay, we're now down to resolutions. A, resolution number 25, 2019-20, comp plan amendment, Town of Lebanon and Little Wolf. Mr. Ryan Brown's on his way up. He's going to be playing a lot of first base this year.
Good morning.
Morning.
So the first comp plan amendment in the Town of Lebanon is to allow for a property owner to get out of farm preservation. They're looking at splitting off some land for some of his children to build a house on. And this one here, this is in the Town of Little Wolf. This one here, what they're looking at doing is they're also looking to do a comp plan amendment to get out of farm preservation. The reason for that is that they're looking to create small lots, 1 acre lots. Inside of farm preservation, you can create residential lots, but the minimum lot size is 2 acres. And what they're looking at doing is creating lots that are 1 acre instead. This one here, this is the Town of Lebanon comp plan amendment. This is the Lee Hebner property. Again, they're looking to get it taken out.
Need a motion? Mr. Zog?
I move that that be approved.
There's a motion by Mr. Zog for approval. Mr. Mork?
I second that motion.
And a second by Mr. Mork. Any questions or discussion? Pat Craig.
When we look at resolution number 25, which is what we're on, when we talk about Little Wolf, it still says lying along Heinke Road. And again, that should say Heinke Drive. And I believe you made that change at your zoning committee.
Sure. Okay. Drive.
So that should say Heinke Drive because there is a Heinke Road, but this property is not on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So noted. Any other questions? Let's vote. Okay, next we have,
Just a second,
Oh.
it's still thinking about showing me. There we go. Last chance to vote. And that motion carries 26-0.
okay, next we have resolution number 26, 2019-20, a comp plan amendment, Town of Caledonia, Farmington, and Larrabee.
Okay. So this is the comp plan amendment in the Town of Caledonia. So what the Town of Caledonia is doing is what several other towns have done in Waupaca County thus far, and that is they're adopting a generalized preferred land use map. So what that means again is that they're going to be using planning districts rather than zoning districts on their preferred land use. The beauty of using that style of map is that it still retains local control while making it far more user-friendly. So the districts that they have on here, you'll see all this, the brown is agriculture, that yellow is residential, the red is commercial, and you can kind of see it right here, that hamlet, that's Reedfield, that's a hamlet, so that allows for residential and commercial as a mixed use. This comp plan amendment here, this is in the town of Farmington. So what they're looking at doing is they're changing the preferred land use designation for that parcel from agriculture to commercial. And what that is allowing for is to allow for the rezone for a business that's going to be moving in. And that's the certified survey map for that. And this comp plan amendment here in the town of Larrabee, this is a project that, well, myself and Brian Haas and Land and Water have been working on this one for probably 2.5 years here. This is to implement farm preservation in the town. So what this is doing is all these areas that they have shaded here, those are all the areas that are being implemented or put into farm preservation in the town of Larrabee.
Okay, is there a motion? Supervisor Hendrick?
I'll move to approve this.
A motion by Supervisor Hendrick for approval. Mr. Nygaard?
I'll second that.
And a second by Mr. Nygaard. Questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 26-0.
Thank you, Ryan.
You bet.
Resolution number 27 is a 2019-20 official newspaper.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors does authorize the Waupaca County Clerk to continue to select official newspapers in an alphabetical rotation from any qualified newspapers published within Waupaca County for a one-year period commencing from January 1st and ending December 31st of each year, effective upon passage by the County Board. Be it further resolved that the County Clerk shall reimburse each County Board Supervisors with a subscription to the official Waupaca County newspaper if she or he choose to subscribe.
Jill, did you clear the last request? Yes. Okay, so
Okay. Supervisor Golding?
I make a motion to approve.
There's a motion by Supervisor Golding to approve. Supervisor Craig?
I second that motion.
A second by Supervisor Craig. Questions? Mr. Murphy?
I need some clarification on this. Apparently there are 3 newspapers within our county that are owned under the tent of one manufacturer or one business. I think I know that they will be rotated through those 3 as single newspapers?
Yes. Yes. The list is from 2014 to 2028 in your packet. Next year will be the Clintonville Tribune Gazette, which is owned by MMC Multimedia Publications, I believe. And then we go to Marion Advertiser, then the New London Press Star, which is also owned by MMC, and then the Waupaca County Post, which is also owned by MMC.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Let's vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 26-0. Finance Committee, this was updated at Finance, so I do need your signatures before you leave today.
Okay, we're at ordinances, amendments to the General Code of Ordinances, number 8. 8A, 2019-687, amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-021-19, Town of Lebanon, Lee and Cindy Hebner, for a zoning map amendment from AR District to AWT District.
So this is the Hebner property. Again, they're looking at, we just got done with the comp plan amendment allowing for the rezone to AWT. And so what this is going to allow them to do is some additional development rights because they'd like to create more lots for their children to potentially build onto.
Mr. Quisman?
Motion to approve.
The motion by Mr. Quisman to approve. Mr. Vasquez,
I'll second that motion.
and a second by Mr. Vasquez. Questions? Some discussion? Please vote.
This delay just gives me time to focus on all of you and wish you a Merry Christmas. So, last chance to vote. Okay, that didn't want to tally. Kevin, yours, do you want to click yours again, Kevin? Yours must have went off. Thank you. That motion carries 26-0.
No, it's good, thank you. What's that? 8B, 2019-688, amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-022-19. Town of Little Wolf, J.E. and Darlene M. Farina, for zoning map amendment from AR District to RR District.
So again, this is the Farina property. They're looking to go into rural residential. The reason for that is they want to create 1 acre lots as opposed to 2 acre lots inside of farm preservation.
Supervisor Fedowitz,
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
there's a motion by Mr. Fedowitz for approval. Mr. Johnson,
Second.
and a second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? Please vote.
Did the vote button show up? Oh, there we go. Last chance to vote. Motion carries 26-0.
8C, 2019-689, amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-023-19, Town of Larrabee for a zoning map amendment from AWT District to AR District.
So this is the companion process to implement farm preservation in the town of Larrabee. The Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection, or DADCAP, has certified 3 districts of ours in our zoning ordinance. So that's Ag Retention, Ag Enterprise, and PBRF, or Private Forestry. The town made the decision that they wanted to rezone everybody in the town of Larrabee to ag retention. It's our least restrictive agricultural district. It's still certified by DADCAP. And so in order for all the people in the town to actually participate in farm preservation, this is the rezone process we have to go through. And you'll notice that this map is identical to the farm preservation map that we just passed, because that we need to have them in farm preservation on the comp plan as well as properly zoned.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Nygaard?
I move to approve, and I just want to thank the board for bearing with us, because this is a couple-step process here to get this done the way code dictates.
Okay, there is a motion by Mr. Nygaard. Mr. Morick?
Second that motion.
And a second by Mr. Morick. Discussion? Let's vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 26-0.
8D, 2019-690. It's amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-024-19. Town of Scandinavia, Michael R. and Christine C. Binley for a zoning map amendment from AE District to RR-0 District, O District, on approximately 2 acres.
So the Binleys are looking to split off 2 acres for their daughter to build a house onto. You'll notice that this district is rural residential overlay. That's because they are inside of farm preservation and they used one development right to create this lot. So the difference here is that rural residential overlay is our rural residential district when they stay inside of farm preservation. If they come out, like the Farina property, then it goes to just rural residential.
Supervisor Pullman?
I'd move for approval for Mike and Chris's request.
There's a motion by Supervisor Pullman for approval. Supervisor Muck?
I'll second that motion.
And a second by Supervisor Muck. Discussion? Any questions? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 26-0.
(8E), 2019-691. Amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-025-19. Town of Farmington. Scott and Elizabeth Rabe for a zoning map amendment from SR District to RC-G District and for a conditional use permit in the RC-G on approximately 11 acres.
So this rezone from the Seward Residential District to the Rural Commercial General District is to allow for the business to go in there. The business that he's looking at putting in, it's a boat dock or boat service delivery business. So it's similar to what you'll see for the Schmitz docks you see out on Highway 10 to the east side of Fleet Farm. It's similar to that. It's going to look similar to that. You'll see that they have a conditional use here for a long-term storage. That's already been decided on by the Planning and Zoning Committee, but just so you understand, it's similar to the place out on Highway 10. He is going to have some boat docks or boat lifts in front of the business, and that's why we have that additional outdoor storage on there.
Supervisor Gerald Murphy?
I move to approve 2019-691 amendment to Chapter 34.
Okay, there is approval by Gerald Murphy. A motion. Supervisor Gerald Murphy?
I'll second that.
And a second by Supervisor Terry Murphy. Questions or discussion? Please vote.
No. Supervisor Ellis, did you have a question or were you seconding?
No, I was going to try and second.
Okay, thank you. Last chance to vote. Motion carries 26-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, we're down to reports. We have a CAP Services report. Mary Pataka, President and CEO, and Nicole Harrison, Chief Program Officer, are with us this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Did I pronounce that right or not?
Kind of.
I'm sorry.
It's Patoka.
Patoka, okay.
Yes.
I stand to be corrected.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oops, let's see. Tap twice, did you say?
No, your mic's on.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. It's the light if you want to tap twice.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for having us this morning. CAP Services is an anti-poverty organization that was created in 1966. So we're a little old, but we serve counties based on county designation. So while we opened in 1966, it was probably in the the early 1980s that the county board here in Waupaca designated our organization to provide services in the county to try and end poverty and provide opportunities for people who are low income. So in that time, our services have grown and expanded based on needs. Sometimes they shrink because the need goes away. But what we hope to do today is to give you an overview of some of the things we did in the county in 2018. Some data is certainly ready for 2019, but we might come back if you'd like and can provide an update for 2019 next year. So CAP's mission is really to transform people and communities to advance social and economic justice. And we just changed our mission statement a couple of years ago, in part because our former mission statement didn't address the work that we do in communities that certainly have benefit to residents, but a project or an initiative really is a community asset. Along with me today is Nicole Harrison, our Chief Program Officer, and I will turn it now over to her for a bit.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I need to erase this a little bit. So what I wanted to share with you this morning is some highlights of programs that are available right here in Waupaca County for community residents who are struggling. So 1 in 3 families right here in Waupaca County are struggling to make ends meet. That is 1 in 3. Just want that to sit in for a moment. So what that means is 1 in 3 families here in Waupaca County do not have enough resources to cover basic needs such as housing, transportation, healthcare, and childcare. So to help identify resources that will best support families here locally, CAP conducts a needs assessment every 3 years to identify what those priorities are for individuals who are struggling. The most recent needs assessment was conducted this year. We actually just wrapped it up in October. And the top issues identified can be summarized into 3 broad categories. And those are economic security, employment, and housing. You can see on the slides what the top specific priority areas were as identified by that survey. And I do want to say the survey is conducted. We have a needs assessment that is mailed to households within our 5-county service area. And it is a random distribution based on income as identified by the census. And then we collect all of that data back and we're able to sort it by all individuals within our 5 counties as well as by county. So I wanted to make you aware of that. We also collect information from community partners and our CAP services staff who work with families on a day-to-day basis. So CAP organizes its services into 7 priority areas, which you can see here on the slides. So the information collected from that needs assessment helps guide our programming, again, in local communities based on local needs and resources. So today we will talk about those programs specifically available to residents here in Waupaca County, again, based on what those local needs and what the resources are available to help support those needs. The first focus area I'd like to highlight is our job skills and economic security programs. Here in Waupaca County, we have 2 programs available, which one is CAP's Skills Enhancement Program, which was started back in 1991. Again, as a result of feedback from that needs assessment, we were hearing from people who were in the workforce who were struggling to make ends meet, yet did not have the resources available to pay for additional training to obtain the skills they need to get a higher paying job. So this program was created in 1991 in Outagamie County and has now since expanded to all of our counties within CAP service area, as well as there are several community action agencies across the state who are also offering the Skills Enhancement Program. So the program provides assistance for individuals who are working at least 20 hours per week and who have household incomes at or below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. To help give a frame of reference for that, that's around $51,500 for a family of 4. We are excited to announce that our program overall since 1991 has celebrated 1,000 graduates. That just happened in October of this year. And those 1,000 graduates averaged an increase in household income of $12,000. Again, that's an increase in household income. Over the past 5 years, if we take that average, it's closer to $15,000 for an increase in income. So year to date here in Waupaca County, we have served 36 individuals, and 2 of those individuals have successfully completed their training plans and got new jobs with an average increase of $11,830. And you can see that that was a significant return on investment when you look at the average direct cost per participant for that training was $887. I want to say that again, $887 for that return of almost $12,000 per year for those families. Definitely a significant return. The next program I'd like to highlight is CAP's Free Tax Assistance Program, which is also known as VITA, which stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. Last season, there were 112 Waupaca County households served, and those households were able to have a returns of over $195,000. So the income tax assistance helps bring income into households while also saving on tax preparation services. The next focus area I'd like to highlight is our business coaching and lending services, also available here in Waupaca County. These services focus on low to moderate income households who are entrepreneurs. And you can see that in 2018, CAP helped 10 businesses start throughout our service area, and one of those 10 businesses was here in Waupaca County. There were also 38 business loans for business expansion that were valued at over $1 million. And again, 2 of those loans in Waupaca County were here in Waupaca County. For 2019, we've had 1 business expansion right here in Waupaca County. So the services are continuing and helping families to increase their income and build assets. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mary to talk a little bit more about some of our other programming.
Thank you. Oops, I'm going to get my notes out here. So Nicole mentioned earlier that in our needs assessment this year, one of the top needs that families experience is access to decent and affordable housing. So CAP has been in this space for quite some time, and that does take different forms. So one of the things that we do is develop real estate and affordable housing. So right here in the county, we have 167 units of a total we have throughout our portfolio is 768. So if you've looked around, these might look familiar to you. We have a senior housing project in Manawa. We have one in Iola. We have both family and senior projects here in Waupaca. And the reason we got into this space is we were hearing from families that they spent their lifetime, particularly in small rural communities, but as they got older, they just couldn't afford taxes, they couldn't manage the physical demands of owning a home, but they wanted to stay in that home. And so a lot of our senior projects really were designed to address that need, so families could stay in the communities that they spent their lifetime in. I mentioned earlier our change in our mission statement was to advance our mission through both transforming people and communities. I think the affordable housing projects is a good example of that. They're in a community serving people, but without them, those folks couldn't access the kinds of things they need. One other piece we have in terms of affordable housing are 2 2 units, rental units in New London that serve specifically domestic violence victims who've been served in a shelter but are choosing not to go back home. So the apartments give them a landing spot, time to regroup, and prepare for the next steps. Now, another form, I'm going to jump ahead here. Another form of our housing investment includes both financial assistance to buy a home, but also low-cost financing to rehab it. So here in Waupaca, we served 45 households total last year, 7 in Waupaca who actually got housing financing resources from CAP valued at over $133,000. Now, in most of those cases, we are subordinate debt. Well, in this county, all of those were subordinate debt. So a family, let's say, is looking for a home to buy. They find one, but in essence, they from an underwriting point of view, can only afford an $85,000 house, and the house is $100,000. I'm picking numbers out of the air. What CAP can do is bring low-cost financing that's deferred. So what we do is we don't look for a payment on our share of the loan for 20 years or sooner if the person sells the home or it's no longer their primary residence. So it's affordable because they are making payments based on what the bank said they can afford to pay in that underwriting process. Right now we have just short of 1,000 loans like that in our portfolio, and we continue to issue those. Now that's for purchase, but we can also help people who need to fix their homes up. So think of the housing projects that I talked about just prior. Let's say a senior in Iola wants to move into one of our projects. Their house, if it needs a little fixing up, we can help a buyer do that and make that house decent and safe for that family. In addition to those two things, we also offer the low-income weatherization program. We put more money in people's pocket because they're paying less for energy. I think last year our program was one of the highest in the state in terms of measured energy savings for families. I think it approached $780 a year in energy savings. So, if you're low income, think of that. That's probably $60 more a month that you have to spend on something else. And in last year, we had 51 households in Waupaca. The year before, 78 that accessed that program. So again, designed to really help make for decent and affordable housing. Now, another big piece for our families is transportation. I get calls from employers every now and then saying, you must have some people that aren't working and need a job. Send them to me. I'll give them a job. Honestly, about 70% of the families that we work with are working, and sometimes working 2 and 3 jobs and still not making enough to get by. But a big barrier for a lot of them is accessing a decent vehicle to get to work. We live in a rural area. It's very rare that you can live within walking distance of your employer. So we have a car purchase program that you're not going to buy a Cadillac probably, but up to $5,000 we'll lend, 0% interest. There's a little bit of a front-end fee, but it's really designed to get people in something that might be more reliable in their car. We've seen people come in with vehicles with $260,000, $270,000 on it. Heaters don't work, doors don't work. And so, a $5,000 car is not a luxury car, but it's certainly going to be an improvement for a lot of those families. Let's see. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I forgot our switchover. One other area in which we focus a lot of our resources is early childhood education. All of you will know about early brain development, how important that is to lifelong learning. And so we have been operating the Head Start program for nearly 40 years, or just over 40 years. And we have centers here in Waupaca, and serve 79 children in Waupaca County. Last year, we added early Head Start some years ago, and that serves pregnant women and children up to age 3. Now you're wondering, what do you do with a pregnant woman or an infant in terms of a service? There's a lot in terms of helping parents understand early childhood development, proper nutrition, all of those kinds of things that can get a child off on the right start. And certainly when that infant is small, there are certainly things parents can do, and parents are the most important teacher of their children. So we support them in getting their child off and ready for school when the time comes. There you go. A little switch.
So as Mary mentioned earlier, we do have 2 transitional housing units here in Waupaca County for people who have experienced violence in their homes and they elect not to return to that home. So another example of a resource that was created as a result of our needs assessment surveys, back in 1978, CAP opened a domestic abuse shelter. It is located in Stevens Point, but is available for anyone who can travel to our location and who needs that as a resource for that support if they are leaving a domestic abuse situation. So CAP does provide that shelter for 24/7, and it's available for anyone, again, who experiences domestic abuse or sexual assault in their situation, in their home life, and does not wish to or wish to leave that. They do wish to leave that situation. So you will see here on the slides that we had 18 residents from Waupaca County stay in CAP's shelter in 2018. You will see here also there were 913 calls and walk-ins from Waupaca County residents seeking domestic abuse and sexual assault services. And 211 of those individuals were unduplicated. So that's 211 individuals right here in the county who sought services for domestic abuse and sexual assault. Oops, I went one too far. There we go. Another resource that CAP provides is access to the Katie Beckett project. Katie Beckett started back in 1982 as federal legislation to help families who have children with a special health care need, but they don't qualify for Medicaid due to income or assets of the parents. So Katie Beckett is a way for children to be able to stay in their homes and receive the care that they need without parents struggling to find a way to afford those health care services. CAP provides home visiting services, which helps identify whether families are eligible for this waiver program, which provides access to Medicaid for their children's health care needs. And we do this in 23 counties throughout Wisconsin, and Waupaca County is one of those counties. In 2018, we had 25 children who identified this as a need and received home visiting services from our Katie Beckett staff.
So in closing, there's just a couple of things I would say. We don't do this work alone. Clearly, we have lots of community partners, everyone from law enforcement to correction to the school district, certainly local government. Dave Johnson serves on our board of directors as well, so we have that connection between us and the community. But we certainly want to help raise the understanding thinking of people who are living in poverty, one of the exercises we offer is something called a poverty simulation. In essence, you walk in the shoes of a person who really doesn't have enough money to pay their monthly bills, and you experience the kinds of decisions you have to make. Certainly those are available in our community. I think we have 7 scheduled already for 2019. So do watch for those. Oh, 2020, sorry, I'm sticking a little too late. But in closing, CAP doesn't make a difference. Nicole spoke to the 1,000th grad in our skills enhancement program, clearly a program that grew out of our needs assessment survey. We know that when people living and experiencing poverty have ideas, they are some of the best ideas in terms of making a difference. Over the time we've run the Head Start program, almost 12,000 children have benefited. And Nicole spoke to also the work at the Crisis Center. Nearly 75,000 nights of shelter since 1979. In closing, thank you. If you have questions, we'll certainly take them now.
We have any questions?
I do have.
Mr. Fedowitz, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have along some annual reports for both CAP Services and our lending division, as well as a breakdown of our needs assessment survey that gives results specifically that came from Waupaca County. I'll leave those on the front and you can take them at your leisure.
Mr. Fedowitz?
Yes, my question can be for either Mary or Nicole. I have 2 questions. One is going back to the celebration you had on the 1,000 people that graduated. What's the criteria for these people to even apply or get involved so they know that it's even out there?
Go ahead, Nicole.
So we work very closely with community partners in all of our counties that we offer the programs in, and so they can find out about the program through at Fox Valley Technical College. They can find out by other community resources that they may tap into, and most of our referrals come from word of mouth. And so the criteria for eligibility is 200% of that federal poverty income guidelines. They must be working that 20 hours per week and then live in our service area. And then they can receive access to financial resources, which includes tuition, books, child care reimbursement, and mileage reimbursement. And they can also receive that emotional support as they go through the training to identify barriers and resources to help overcome those barriers so that they can be successful in their completion.
Just to follow up on your comments there, it would appear that there's a lot more than 2 or 3 people in Waupaca County in a given year that could apply for this or be made aware of it or be fortunate enough to have a better life eventually, and that's why I asked the question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have 30 available spots here in Waupaca County specifically. This year we've served 36 individuals. So 2 of those individuals successfully completed the training, and 4 either moved out of the area or had challenges that didn't allow them to complete at this time, but it doesn't mean that they won't complete in the future. So we do keep track of that and do maintain that follow-up with people if they haven't completed yet.
Okay, my other question has to do with education. Coming from the financial background and working with a lot of people in a lot of years, are you able to, or do you have at your disposal some type of ability to have some education available for these people that are on the high end of the poverty level probably? Financial ability, or the ability to manage a household, is the greatest cause of poverty. And I'm trying to figure out if your organization has any way to access communication to get them in some type of educational background, whether it's a group setting or whatever the case might be, because that's where the issue really starts. Thank you.
Well, I might disagree with the fact that it's the greatest cause of poverty. Clearly, I think people in poverty simply don't have enough money to adequately pay their bills. Now, clearly, there's always room for improvement for all of us in terms of managing our money. We, for example, any lending we do is tied to some education around finances. So our homebuyer program, you have to complete some online education in terms of what it means to be a homeowner, managing your home, managing your finances. All of our business lending comes also with a lot of technical assistance by the staff, helping people understand their financials, all of those kinds of things. We just rolled out a pilot product, which is a small loan program for families, up to $2,000. They can refi predatory debt. They can use it for emergencies. They can use it to build their credit so they can go to a bank and get the kind of financing that they need. We just rolled that out this summer. We're piloting it in a couple of counties. Not Waupaca County yet. We haven't gotten the money to put that all together. But what we find is if you've got a predatory loan, and sometimes people make bad choices because they're the only choices they have available to them. If you get a predatory loan, you can be paying hundreds of % of interest. We had somebody come to us who wanted to buy a car through our car program. They had a predatory loan, and we talked to them about refinancing that. So when all was said and done, they could have had a $5,000 increase in loans, and their monthly payment went up by $5 because we saved them that much on the predatory loan.
Okay, and I'm not going to be here to have a discussion on this, but the 2008-2009 financial crisis was caused by a lot of things, and one of them had to do with the lenders lending money to people. And when they sat back after 3 years, they came to the conclusion when banks were giving away money at 100% of the market value of the house, they also came to the conclusion 20 to 25% of those people should have never had a house because they didn't know how to manage a household financially. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Nygaard?
Yeah, you answered a lot of my questions already, but I'm just curious what the interest rate is on the deferred portion where you help out on a home purchase and there's improvements made.
So we have a few different sources of funding. It might be zero. So in Waupaca County, CAP has administered your community development block grant funds. So that is one of the sources which can be 0%. It's no more than 2.25%, and it's simple interest, not compounded. So that makes a big difference as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else for a question? Joel McClone, where are we here? Right here, he's right up here by us.
Thank you. Mary and Nicole, you did a wonderful job. I'm a retired educator, and I can't emphasize enough to you, and I know you're focused on it, is on your Head Start and your early Head Start, because it all starts with those little ones. And I don't know how you can put someone with those little ones to get the 20 hours a week to get into some of these things, but it's so important what happens at that level, because otherwise the chain is never going to change. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I guess not, but thank you, Mary and Nicole. Great stuff, very interesting. And thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us. And Merry Christmas.
Yes, same to you. Okay, we will now commence into the rest of our meeting, and we have this morning a county agriculture update from Greg Blondie. Good day.
Good day, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was probably a year ago where Dick had asked me, hey, we need an update on agriculture in Waupaca County, and I thought for a second, and The Census of Agriculture, which provides the data that I'll be sharing with you here today, is that census is conducted once every 5 years. And the 2017 census data a year ago wasn't available. So they send out the census, and through actually January of 2018, they're still collecting that data. Then USDA sends its statisticians to analyzing that data. They come up with a US, we've all probably heard those numbers in the news over the last several months. And then finally, they get down to county level data. And that was released earlier this summer, so I thought this would be a good time to share that with you. A couple of other things I put on the supervisors' desks anyway, and for those of you in the back, if you'd like copies, we have some in our office as well. But Department of Ag in Madison does publish an annual Growing Wisconsin. It really does a nice job of covering the diversity of agriculture, and well written, a lot of really high quality photos in there. I thought you might like a copy of that as well. And then also a little gift from our office, little notepad signifying our new logo. Of course, this last year, you know, we merged or were acquired by UW-Madison. UW Extension had been a standalone institution within the UW system, and now we are actually part of UW-Madison. So hence the new logo, and I hope you find that handy. In addition to the presentation that I'm giving you today, which is, thanks to Jill and Dawn, available on your website, they've also posted for me a one-page economic summary. I've shared this with Dave Teal as well, Economic Development Coordinator, and that is also available on the website. So we'll move forward. So this is one of the first visuals from the Census of Agriculture in 2017. Looks like chicken pox has hit the country, but this is actually a map showing where the farms are located in the United States. Each of those dots represents 200 farms, and so you can see, you know, agriculture and farming is widespread across the United States. Now keep in mind the definition of what's a farm, right? Everybody's got their own idea of what a farm is, but for USDA survey purposes, it is an operation that sells at least $1,000 of cash farm receipts each year. Well, you say $1,000, a large pumpkin patch could, or a pickle patch could, a large garden could generate $1,000 a year, and that's true. It does add to the diversity of our agriculture, but politically speaking, no administration wants to be known as the administration that lost farms. So there's always a battle and reluctance to be able to cut that number to say $10,000 or even $25,000 of cash sales. So again, $1,000 of sales will get you qualified as a farm. This map shows a little more relative, the concentration of farm numbers in Wisconsin and in surrounding states. The darkest green there, which includes Waupaca County and Outagamie to our east and Shawano to our north, Marathon to our northwest. Those dark green counties are counties that have over 1,000 farms identified in the 2017 census. And you can see there's that band that runs across kind of the Highway 29 corridor, and then again through the southern third and in particular the southwestern area of the state. There's about 30 counties, just less than half of our counties, that have over 1,000 farms in their county. Should mention that nationwide in 2017 compared to 2012, there were 4% fewer farms nationwide. In Wisconsin, in 2017, compared to the 2012 census, there was 7% fewer farms. And in Waupaca County, again, 2017 compared to 2012, there was 10% fewer farms. Why do you think that discrepancy at a state level, a higher number of fewer farms at a state level and then higher number at a county level? Has to do with the type of agriculture that we have here. And I think I heard somebody mention it, we're more dairy oriented, and we all know in the last 5 years what the dairy industry, the challenges the dairy industry has had. So Wisconsin, relative to the United States, has seen a larger proportion of fewer farms, and Waupaca County is even more so. Those numbers, I think, will become self-evident as we go through the presentation. Yeah, tough times. This is a net farm income, both at a national, state level, and then on a regional level. The blue line represents the United States, the red line represents Wisconsin, and the gray line represents the Great Lakes region. This is adjusted to 2017 dollars for inflation, and then it's indexed back to 1970. So you get a real relative comparison of how the economic have gone for farmers since 1970. And you can see that back in the days, I remember hearing as a kid or a younger person, farming fence row to fence row, right? Remember those days in the 70s? You hear that? Well, why not? That was a boom time of agriculture. But that was followed by a fairly significant decline, and of course culminated in the 80s, the early 80s, with the financial crisis that you see represented there in 1983. The recovery then really was a 30 to 35 year stagnation in real dollars. And people ask me all the time, why do farms expand? Right there is the answer. Any business in which the economic growth opportunity is limited, economies of scale become part of the equation. And that was, I think, over that last 35 years is why we've seen such a structural change in agriculture. The size and scale compared to, and I'll show some slides later on, back in the 70s is just hard to imagine. But certainly these last 4 or 5 years have been extremely challenging. This being more of a cash flow issue most recently, and back in the early 80s, it was one of land values, solvency, net worth that was eroded on paper that created the challenges, and Dwayne remembers those days extremely well. So similar implications, but really a couple different reasons why. By the way, if you have questions along the way, please ask. So here I took the ag census data from the period of time that I've been around, going back to the early 80s, and then every 5 years up through the 2017. And of course, those are millions of dollars on the left, the year represented across the bottom. The yellow in the bar graph is that portion of the income that comes from our dairy and livestock farms. Okay? The green portion is that which comes from crop sales, crop production. So you can see over time how things have changed. There was a significant jump, if you will, or adjustment in the mid early 2000s. Anybody know what were the contributing factors to that? Biofuels. Ethanol was a big part of it. Global demand, world trade was also a part of it. We saw really a quantum leap in agricultural markets in mid-2000. Today, about 1 in every 3 or 4 acres of corn they say, nationwide, is actually used in the biofuels industry. So again, some significant changes here. But what's interesting, to me, as I look at it, the distribution between revenue from our animal agriculture, dairy and livestock, and our crop sales has not changed, relatively speaking. In 2017, we still had 3/4 of the $152 million of sales, commodity sales on the farm, that came from dairy and livestock. 63% of that was from dairy alone. The other part of this is when you look deeper into the census data, and I've got it over here on the right, but part of this crunch, economic crunch on our farms, reduced income, was that in 2017, 91% of this $152 million, which came in for the sale of the milk and the meat and the crops, 91% of that, $138 million, went right out the door to pay for expenses. That's not a lot left over to pay yourself or to pay for replacements of machinery and equipment and other assets. So it's been a challenge, obviously, and hopefully things we're beginning to see the bottom. I thought this was really interesting. We go back to World War II era, 1945, predates me. I won't mention anybody else's name here, but in 1945, the dairy industry in Waupaca County accounted for just over half of the total sales of all commodities in Waupaca County. Today, we're at 63% of that. It's interesting that the dairy industry has become more concentrated here than less. Although, as I think about it, farms in general back then were much more diversified than they are today. So this, again, gives you a relative comparison of Waupaca County with our neighbors and in other regions around the upper Midwest here. Those dark red areas are counties where over half of their income, farm income, comes from the sale of milk and cull dairy cows. And you can see again here in Waupaca County, our neighbors to the north, northwest, and east, especially toward the lakeshore, dairy is a larger part, a majority of the income that farms generate. So when we look, again, remember the first map was farms, all farms, nationwide, they're everywhere. Well, this map represents dairy cows, okay? And I think it's just amazing when you think about the dairy industry and how concentrated that is here in Wisconsin and just in a very few other select areas of the country. California in the Central Valley region, you've got Idaho up here in the south central area, northwest Texas, you got some Minnesota, Michigan, and then again here in New York, Pennsylvania. That's where that's where our milk and cheese and our dairy products originate. And of course, Wisconsin being at the center of that. Again, to put in perspective the quantum changes that have occurred, this map shows a number of different things related to the dairy industry. This is nationwide, with everything indexed back to 1970. So everything would be equal to 1 in 1970, and so then you can see a relative change up or down through 2017. And this includes milk, total milk production, number of dairy farms, milk per cow, and number of dairy cows. So when you look at that pink line on the bottom, and we hear a lot about this being reported, 93% fewer dairy farms since 1970. But if we look at that black line, or excuse me, the blue line, 84% more milk. with 93% fewer farms. And when we look at that black line, that's actually cow numbers. That's relatively stable, although 22% fewer dairy cows. But look at the efficiency from each one of those cows. 135% more milk per cow in 2017 than 1970. Talk about an industry that has really focused on efficiency. Unbelievable. So this gets back closer to home. The green side of this table is Waupaca County. Again, looking back on the left-hand side here, starting in 1982 and then down through 2017. The percent change is calculated from the previous census in 2012. And then over here you've got the state of Wisconsin. Very similar type numbers, both in Waupaca County as across the state. We saw a significantly fewer farms, a quarter less dairy farms in just that 5-year period, from 199 to 148. But we also saw 3% more cows. How do you have 25% fewer farms and 3% more cows? What's going on? They're growing. The remaining dairy farms are growing. And when you look at that, the economics of the situation, that part of that is that growth is being driven by the economics. And actually, in 2017, we produced more milk in Waupaca County than has ever been produced since I've been around, certainly, which is just amazing. And again, similar trends, not identical, but very similar in the state of Wisconsin. So before I move on from the dairy industry here, I guess I'd like to, again, put it in perspective. Of the 68 counties in Wisconsin that produce milk, Waupaca County ranks 17th. And nationwide, which is even harder to wrap your mind around, we rank in the top 5% of all counties in the United States. There's just over, I think, 3,077 counties in the United States. About 1,900 of those counties have some type of milk production. Waupaca County is in the top 90 of counties, top 5% of all counties that produce milk in the United States. So it's an industry that, while things have changed and we hear a lot of doom and gloom, don't take for granted how significant that is here in our own backyard. So the survey, the census then broke down by primary crop or primary production. Respondents, so our dairy farms identified that dairy, 197 versus 140 in that survey. I guess to point out that a third or a quarter of our farms actually, or if you add forage crops to the grain crops, that's a majority of our farms said some type of crop production is our primary enterprise. Interesting though, when you break out the third of the acres that are of corn that are grown for corn silage is used to feed ruminant animals like dairy cows, beef cattle, and add that to forage crop, the number one crop we grow in Waupaca County is forages to be consumed by ruminant animals, dairy and beef animals. But here again, you can see there's a 10% decline. So we have just over 1,000 total farms, down from 1,145 in 2012. This, again, I mentioned early on, what makes a farm? Anything over $1,000, and here you can broken down not only in Wisconsin on the far left, or excuse me, Waupaca County in the far left in 2017, Wisconsin in 2017, and then across the nation on the far right by size of sales. I found it was kind of interesting when you look at farms that sell less than $25,000 of commodities a year. That's a majority, vast majority, probably 2/3 of our farms are classified as small operations. But then we also have a fifth, 21%, and again, a little more, 25% statewide, 18% nationwide, that have over $100,000 in sales a year as well. So it's diverse, but very similar countywide to state to nation in terms of distribution of earnings by farm. Now we're talking about farmers. Okay, farms are physical locations. Farmers are flesh and blood, right? So this is a little demographics this census found about the farmers in Waupaca County. Again, pointing out that a majority, 55%, were considered part-time, what I'll call part-time operators. It was not their primary occupation. 45% were 742 of these 652 farmers said that farming was their primary occupation. Very similar statewide. Here's one that's interesting. We don't often think about farms as having payroll, but this gets back to that previous slide where we showed over 20% of our farms generating over $100,000 in sales. Well, I would bet most of those, and then some, with even less sales, are paying hired labor and don't just rely on family and friends to run the operation. 1 out of 4 farms in Waupaca County has a payroll, and that payroll is worth $16 million annually. The other thing that has changed over time in agriculture, even in the time I've been around, is the influence of women in agriculture. And we see it not only in the farm, but also in agribusiness as well. The census in 2017 showed that a third of our farmers, over a third, 35% of all farmers of these 652 farmers identified themselves as women. And of the 1,031 farms, a third of those women were the principal operator. Now, that may include many of our smaller part-time operations, but I don't think we can underestimate or overstate how important it is women's role in agriculture today. I guess it's always been true. Maybe it's just that we're recognizing it now based on the type of survey questions are being asked. The average age of the farms, our farmers, really hasn't changed much. 56 years, which is very similar, identical to the statewide average, and a little less than the national average. 30%, between 1/4 and 1/3 of all of our farmers were over 65 years of age. Get down here. This is a map that, again, you kind of an aha moment for me, because we talk about agriculture in Waupaca County and we think about it being everywhere, right? It's widespread. Now we're going to just look at the land base here. This is farmland, and 42% of the land base in Waupaca County, about, I don't know, 475,000 acres, border to border inside Waupaca County, 42% of that is classified as farmland. Of course, not all farmland can be used to grow crops, right? That includes woodlots, pastures, buildings, driveways. About 30% of the farmland, of all land, is cropland, and that's what you see represented here is cropland in the county, about 1/3 of our area. But look where it's located. Heavily concentrated in the northeast and south central areas of the county, right? That's not to dismiss the importance along the western or southern edge, but make no mistake that agriculture and the land base of supporting agriculture runs on a line between Waupaca, Waiawega, up through Manawa to Clintonville, maybe back over to Marion and down toward New London. And that has implications, as you well know, regarding public policies going forward. Now, let's see. Well, just a couple more here and we'll wrap it up. This is one that, you know, as we look at that previous graph about the challenges in lower net farm income, the question has always been, what about land prices? Because we think back to what happened in the early 80s, and once land values started to tumble, that really limited the ability of many of our farm businesses from borrowing money. And in farming, like many businesses today, is a highly capitalized industry. Fortunately, as you can see here on the graph, land values, and this is based on sales that are recorded right here at Mike Mazemke's office. And this shows you the summary by Waupaca County in red, and then our surrounding counties in the dotted line would be the average for the state of Wisconsin. From 2012 all the way through last year, these are available through the Department of Ag here. This wasn't part of the USDA census. But fortunately, you can see here that land values have held steady. That red line for Waupaca County is right at about $4,000 an acre for cropland, this is. And again, this would exclude wooded or other types of farmland, tillable farmland. And statewide, it was about $5,500, that dashed line. What I found interesting was look what's going on to our east and our north. And you wonder if that's going to begin to creep over into Waupaca County. Land values actually went up between 2017 and 2018 pretty significantly to average about $6,000 an acre in Shawano County and $8,000 an acre in Outagamie County. So we'll see what another year brings, but the good news is that land values have held steady and underpin the balance sheet of our farm operations. So I'll end with this. Steve Deller, ag economist down at UW-Madison. Every year the U.S. Census is published. He then digs into his economic reports and conducts an analysis on the impact of the agricultural economy, not only in Wisconsin, but by county. And you can see here in Waupaca County that when you take into account not only the sales that these farms generate, but then the multiplier effect of the dollars in terms of that 91% that they use to buy expenses, and in turn, what those agribusinesses then generate in terms of salary and wages and inputs that they have to purchase. In Waupaca County, agriculture, and this includes not only farming, but also the agricultural industry, agribusiness industry, accounts for 22% of our economy measured in terms of sales. That's over $1 billion. Second only to manufacturing, but way ahead of tourism. And it accounts for 14% of all jobs and 13% of all income. And you can see under each of those measures how we rank relative statewide and in the region. And you can see in terms of dollars generated, the ag economy here is more significant in Waupaca County than it is statewide or even within the region. So obviously things have changed, but I think there's a lot of good news as we look at agriculture today and going forward here in Waupaca County. So, yes?
I noticed that the ginseng people are occupying northern part of Shawano County and also Portage and Marathon. And they pay more than $400 an acre.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I talk about a lot about dairy because it is such a big influence here, but there's a lot of other enterprises that are important. The ginseng industry, from what I understand, and I don't know much about it, but they look for land that is above granite. For whatever reason, they're real or otherwise, that granite, that close proximity to a granite subsurface is what the ginseng growers are focusing on. So we do have some, they call them gardens, ginseng gardens in the northwest part of Waupaca County.
I don't believe you can plant too much on it after the harvest.
Yeah, there are some diseases, not a lot different than potatoes and others, that grown consecutively for years, that disease profile will build up and can then really prevent the ability to plant right back into it. So, and it's not something you plant one year and harvest that same year. It's kind of like Christmas trees. You gotta wait a number of years before you can harvest it. Bob?
Would it be fair to say that Waupaca County, or maybe all of Wisconsin, is a dairy state because of the soil? If you want to grow a good crop, you go find some black dirt, and it doesn't exist in this county anyway, or not much of it.
Yeah, I think there's a number of factors. When you go back to that map of the United States and go look at where all those cows are located, is that just happenstance? It goes back to the environment. Water, fresh, available water, close to the surface. Now, again, that can also be a challenge when it comes to, protecting and preserving groundwater, surface water, but we have access to good quality water. Soils that are really productive soils. The other thing is just climate in general. Those big dairy cows that a dairy cow today will weigh about 1,800 pounds on average, some more, some less. And that internal factory that they use to consume forage and convert it into milk and meat generates a tremendous amount of heat. So these cows, these large ruminant animals, love, by and large, the climate. I think 50 degrees is what they claim is thermal neutral for a dairy animal. And when you look at the average temperature in Wisconsin compared with a lot of other parts of the United States, we are much closer to that thermal neutral level than other areas. So, yeah, I think, Bob, in the long run, Wisconsin has a competitive advantage in not to mention the processing industry. And that's reflected in that 22% of our total economy, not just the dairy producers and other farmers, but you take places like Agripure, one of the largest dairy processors in the world, with a plant right here in Waupaca. That's going to be around for a long time. And other processors like DuPont Cheese up in Marion. The infrastructure that supports that industry it all goes hand in hand.
Greg, what is the status of hemp farming in Waupaca County?
About a year ago, I had a couple of calls on hemp. In fact, we actually participated in a meeting, and we had a handful of folks show up and explore it. There's so little we know about it from a research standpoint. So until hemp was deregulated or taken off the Class 1 narcotic list a year or so ago, any university that received federal grant dollars couldn't touch it for fear of losing all other federal grant monies. Well, you take what they call a R1 or a high-level research institution like UW-Madison, there's no way they're gonna jeopardize medical research, all the other research that comes out of that to mess with hemp. So we don't have data to be able to share with people. There are some other places like the University of Kentucky, which historically hasn't been done a lot of research. They've actually got some years worth of information, but from what I can tell, it's a very challenging crop, hand labor, a lot like, maybe even less mechanized than Christmas trees. These hemp plants are harvested by hand, and there's a very short window between when they can be processed. They're very wet, sticky, just the nature of the plant itself, which makes it difficult to store in dry. So while I think that industry is still evolving, Dick, I don't know of anybody in Waupaca County that has a license. I think there's a handful that maybe have applied and received a license to grow hemp. I'm not aware of anybody processing hemp here in the county, but like most things in life, where does the truth lie? Probably somewhere in the middle. Is it the panacea that everybody claims, or is it the next? I'm trying to think of what the crop was. Help me out, Dwayne. Artichokes, Jerusalem artichokes years ago. That was going to, and so is it a Jerusalem artichoke, or is it's probably somewhere in the middle, but we need the research to be able to, and the field demonstrations to be able to determine that. So we'll see. Where it goes from here.
Okay.
Yep.
Jack Spearings?
Greg, at present time in Waupaca, there's an individual purchased dual wolf river sausage plant, and in the last 6-8 months he's stuck considerable amount of money into that plant, converting it to a hemp processing. He plans on making that extremely large, and he has several people contracted ready to bring hemp into it. He has bought the machinery necessary from, I believe, Germany, has had it shipped in overseas, and it's all being installed, and he's got big plans there.
Yeah, hopefully these early investments pay off.
Any other questions? Gosh, thanks so much for coming, Greg. It's very good stuff. We have to get you back a little more often.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
You bet. First of all, we need to thank our county clerk for the great sweets, goodies back there. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And just for an update, I know a number of people have asked me about a few years ago I had a World Series hero in here, Mike Jersley, talking to us. Maybe it came 2 different years after winning a World Series once. Well, Mike is not going to be with the Kansas City Royal team this year. He's with the organization. You know how that goes in the big league baseball. They hired a new manager, Mike Matheny, who is originally from the Cardinals, and they hired him, and what does the new manager do? Bring his own people in. So Mike has coached third base for a lot of years, and he has not heard exactly what his duties are going to be, but he suspects that he'll be a traveling a roving instructor through the whole system. He did this once before, some years ago. He'd rather be in a dugout with a big league team, but at least he said he'd be home more during the summer, which at his age he's happy about. So that's the update on Mike. The other thing is, too, for next year, we're looking into some supervisory training for the supervisors. I did talk to WCA at some length recently, and we're going to be having them come in, I think it's in May, and I'm going to have a special county board meeting, and they're going to give us training. Of course, they don't charge for this because we already pay close to $9,000 in fees for WCA membership, but these are some of the things they do for we counties. Plus the fact they told me that as they used to over in Stevens Point at the Holiday Inn, they used to have training on different subjects maybe 5 times a year. They got away from that last year, but they told me that they're going to get back into it this coming year. So those are all going to be available to us. Schedule I don't know, but at any rate, we're working on continuing training. When they do come in here, it's going to be after the election because we'll have some new supervisors, and so that they get started off with all of us on updated training. Other than that, I just want to thank, I did last time, but thank all of you and the staff out there for keeping Waupaca County great again. We've had a great year again, thanks to you working together, and it only happens in Waupaca County. I really thank you for that a lot. Other than that, I'm wishing you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. That's all I have from the flight deck. So, announcements, I think you're ready.
Yes, with the resolution, it showed you that Clintonville Tribune Gazette will be the next paper for 2020. I will send out an email to all staff as well as county board members as far as their contact information. On your desk is a calendar, Discover Wisconsin calendar from Wisconsin Counties Association, as well as in your packet the WCDC monthly report.
Thank you, and with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Supervisor.
And I'll second it. Terry.
Well, whatever. Please vote.
You don't have to vote.
No, you don't have to vote. We're adjourned, okay.